Welcome everyone. I'm Pete from Sync Computing, and I am thrilled to present to you Gradient, a cloud-native platform designed to lower the costs of your Spark-based workflows without having to sacrifice performance. So Gradient does this by monitoring your workflows and using the Spark logs to generate an optimized compute configuration. So today, I'm going to walk you through the process of optimizing a Databricks job. Okay, let's start by creating a project. A project is a container where you manage and view your recommendations. For Databricks, we have a simple import wizard, see that here, and it can automatically create gradient projects for you based on the workflows that exist in your Databricks workspace. So all I need to do is provide a Databricks token and the URL for my workspace. Don't worry, we don't store the token and only use it for this session. So connecting to Databricks and retrieving compatible jobs should only take a few seconds. There we go. And as you can see here, I have a few options. So let's choose this first one, load all medallion tables. And just like that, a new gradient project has been created and is now ready to receive Spark logs. So before we move on, take note of this project ID over here. You'll need this later. Before we leave the gradient UI, let's grab our Sync API keys. You'll find them here under Account Settings. As you can see, I already have some set up. Let's generate some new keys for this example. You'll need your Sync API keys whenever you use the Gradient library. For this example, we'll be using the Sync library to send our Spark logs to Gradient from our Databricks Workflows pipeline. So let's take a look at the Databricks job we selected. It looks like this job has a single notebook run as the task. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that Gradient has all the data it needs to optimize this job. So let's start by making sure that the Spark event logs are saved to S3 or DBFS. Okay, great. It looks like they are. So we'll want to install, next, we'll want to install the Gradient Databricks agent on this cluster. So this is an agent that saves ephemeral AWS instance info to the logs path while the job's running. So for this demo, I've already saved this agent installation script locally. See that here. But you can find it on our doc site. So I'll make sure to leave a link below. Okay, so for now, we're going to install the agent through a cluster scoped init script. But in the future, you can also do this through a global init script so that you only have to set it up once for all your jobs. Okay, so this agent reads the credentials and configurations it needs from environment variables. So let's set those up now. Since some of these variables contain sensitive info, like keys and tokens, you should use Databricks secrets to hide them. Conveniently, I have some that I previously set up. And you'll be able to find a list of all the variables you need in the docs. But at a high level, you'll need your Databricks token, your AWS creds, and the region, and the gradient project ID for the project that we just created. And that's it. This task is now configured. Only one more step to go. So the last step, make sure that we save all the data that Gradient needs. For this step, we're going to submit all those logs to the Gradient by adding a new task to the workflow. So let's add a new task and call it Get Recommendation. Okay, so this task runs a notebook that calls the Gradient Python library. Again, you can find this notebook code in the links in the docs below. So I'm going to connect that. Okay, this task will also need some workflow context, information like the job, run, and task IDs. So we're going to pass those as task parameters like so. Just give me a moment to set these all up. These double curly brace variables that I'm setting are actually set by the Databricks Workflows. And so they're available in any workflow that you're using. Okay, so the last part of the setup um, is to give the task its own compute cluster. So we can't use the same cluster as the last task because we need to make sure that that task was fully completed and wrote all the logs before we start this one. Okay, so we are creating a new one. We're going to call this cluster, how about get recommendation cluster? That makes sense. All the cluster is doing is submitting the logs to Gradient, so it can be pretty small. So for this demo, I'm actually going to use a single node cluster. As we did before, we're going to add some environment variables. So these are the same, except we are also adding some credentials for the sync API keys. And just like that, we are done. Your Databricks job is now configured to be monitored and optimized by Gradient. The next time this workflow runs, you'll find a recommendation waiting for you on your project's dashboard. Thanks everyone, I hope this was helpful, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to you. We'd love to hear from you.